Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today is 19th of September 2018 and we are going to discuss important editorials from Indian Express. So before I start, I want to request you, if you are new to my channel, then please go and subscribe to it. And don't forget to press the bell icon so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get the notification. So let's start with the first article. The first article is regarding corruption or the crony capitalism, to be precise. Okay, so this article, it talks about that how crony capitalism, it affects our country's independence, how it undermines the state's independence, plus how it hampers the promotion of the public good. So this is what this article is talking about. So first of all, you should know that what is crony capitalism. So crony capitalism is a type of economy in which favoritism occurs. Okay, that means that if you have a friend or a relative who holds a position in the government, okay, maybe a bureaucrat or some other position, then that person will favor you. So basically it is a collaboration or a nexus between the businessman and politician. Okay, and in crony capitalism, the businesses, they grow not due to the market mechanism, not due to the free market mechanism, but due to favoritism. Okay, that means that the businesses, they grow by getting favors from the politicians. So what are the different facets of the Indian version of the crony capitalism? So the author says, the first facet is that the cronies, they have no political party. Okay, so they do not belong to one political party, and to be more precise, they even shift their allegiance from one party to another. So if we see Vijay Mallya once became a Rajya Sabha member in early 2000 with the support of Congress, but then he shifted his allegiance to BJP, and then he was re-elected to the upper house with the help of BJP and JDS. What is the other facet? What is the another important point of the Indian version of the crony capitalism is that their political trajectory, that means the trajectory of the cronies, it shows that parties need capitalists. But why these parties, they are accepting them in their own party? Because they also need funds. The political parties also need funds in the elections. Okay, and although they know that these cronies, they do not belong to one party, still they are accepting them because they also need the funds. And there is a paper written by Raghuram Rajan where he has written that the poor need the savvy politicians to help them navigate through rotten public services. अब गरीब को क्यों जरूरत होती है? क्योंकि अगर आपको कुछ काम करवाना है तो आपको पॉलिटिशियंस की हेल्प लेनी पड़ती है. जैसे लोकल एमएलएस के पास जाके आप अपनी प्रॉब्लम रख सकते हो, तो उनको चाहिए. ठीक है, पुअर को पॉलिटिशियंस चाहिए क्योंकि उनको पब्लिक सर्विसेज चाहिए. पर पॉलिटिशियन को करप्ट बिजनेसमैन क्यों चाहिए? क्योंकि उनको फंड्स चाहिए, उनकी पार्टी को फंड्स चाहिए, क्योंकि उनको इलेक्शंस भी तो लड़ने हैं. तो फंड्स कहाँ से आएंगे? अब चलो, ये तो हो गया कि पुअर को पॉलिटिशियन की क्यों जरूरत थी, पॉलिटिशियन को करप्ट बिजनेसमैन की क्यों जरूरत थी. अब बिजनेसमैन को पॉलिटिशियंस की क्यों जरूरत होती है? क्योंकि उनको अपना प्रॉफिट चाहिए. और प्रॉफिट कैसे आएगा? अगर उनको नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज जो है वो चीपली मिल जाए. सो प्रॉफिट विल कम ओनली व्हेन दे विल गेट द नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज cheaply. So that's why the businessmen, they need the politicians. Now the author says that Rajan has written only about the natural resources, but it is not only the natural resources. The businessman not only needs the natural resources, but he or she also needs loans for his or her investments. Okay, because they have to invest in a huge amount, so they definitely need loans for that, and for that they need the help of politicians. And that is the reason that we are now facing the problem of the huge non-performing assets of the public sector banks, because these businessmen, they get loans when they are friendly with the country's politicians, okay, with the country's rulers. And that's why the politicians, they help them to get loans from these public banks, and these loans are provided to them even if their projects, they are not at all convincing. So even if their projects are bad, okay, not at all convincing, even then they are getting loans from the public sector banks. And even if they are running heavy debts also, then also they are getting the loans. So this is a huge problem. The author says that this is because for example, in the next election campaign or in the upcoming elections, the rulers will need money, and that money will come from some part of the loan that the businessman will get. So that's why they help these businessmen in getting the loans. And the author has also given the example of the Adani group. So basically, it's not only about Malia. There are many other entities or business organizations. Like if we see Adani group, they had a high level of debt, but still they received loans. So that shows that they will continue to receive loans under the patronage of the politicians. Now the author says that one category of these cronies, it is made of those people who are active in politics. That means they are businessmen also, and they are participating in the politics also. That means they are contesting elections also, and maybe they are becoming MPs or MLAs. Okay, so for proving this fact, the author also cites Asima Sinha, who said that the number of such businessmen, that means businessmen who turned politicians, okay, that percentage has actually increased in the Lok Sabha, and it has jumped from 14% to 26% between 1991 and 2014. And 2014 में 143 of the 282 BJP MPs, they belonged to this category. That is those businessmen who have turned MPs. So see, it is almost half. So the author says that this actually reflects the win-win situation or the win-win equation between both the political parties and the businessmen. Because on one hand, what is happening is parties, they will get the support, they will get the funds from these businessmen, and on the other hand, these businessmen turned MPs, they get access to the corridors of power. So this is a huge problem. See, these businessmen turned MPs, they are getting access to power. ठीक है, अगर उनको पावर मिल गई तो उनके पास बहुत सारे जो है वो फायदे आ जाएंगे. उनको पता चल जाएगा कि गवर्नमेंट जो है वो हमारे इंडस्ट्री के लिए क्या क्या पॉलिसीज बना रही है, और अल्टीमेटली वो ये कोशिश करेंगे कि जो भी पॉलिसीज बने वो उनके हित में बने, राइट? So these businessmen turned MPs, if they will have access to the corridors of power, then they can access the first-hand information about what policies the government is making and what policies will be useful for their businesses, and they will make every effort to influence such policies so that the profit comes to them. And for this statement, the author has cited an example that Malia was a member of several committees which was related to his sectors only. That means the companies he was dealing with, he was member of several committees related to those sectors, and that include even the advisory council that Ministry of Civil Aviation set up in 2000s. So that means they are influencing the policies so that they get benefit in their business, and that is why they are increasingly turning to politics. So these are the businessmen turned MPs. And the author says that Malia is not an isolated case. As I've told you earlier, it's not only Malia. Other businessmen turned MPs, they also have such conflicts of interest, and they are increasing in number in the Lok Sabha. And we have just seen that this number, this percentage of the businessmen turned MPs in Lok Sabha, that have jumped from 14% to 26% between 1991 and 2014. Now the problem is that these businessmen turned MPs, they have many advantages. Okay, they learn about the laws that the parliament is making to regulate their activities, and therefore they influence such policies. So that is not the only problem, that they are getting the access to the first-hand information. They will also come to know, if they come in politics, that which all bureaucrats who will implement these rules. Okay, so they will also get to know the bureaucrats who will implement these rules or these policies, and therefore they can affect their independence. How? They will lure them that we can recruit you after even retirement. So that means now the bureaucrat, he or she will not function independently, because they have been lured by these businessmen that they can be recruited after retirement. Okay, so that means the office, the public office, is not any more independent. It is being influenced by these businessmen, right? तो आपको समझ लग गया, दो चीजें होती हैं इसकी वजह से। अगर बिजनेसमैन जो हैं वो पॉलिटिक्स में आ जाती हैं, ठीक है, दे गेट एक्सेस टू कॉरिडोर्स ऑफ पावर, और उसकी वजह से क्या होता है, उनको सारी इंफॉर्मेशन मिल जाती है कि कौन कौन सी पॉलिसीज जो है उनके सेक्टर को रेगुलेट करेंगी, और कैसे उनको इन्फ्लुएंस करना है उन पॉलिसीज को। प्लस द सेकेंड थिंग इज दैट दे ऑल्सो कम टू नो दैट विच ऑल bureaucrats will implement these rules, and therefore they lure them and they say them that okay, we will recruit you after retirement, but you should pass our project or like this. So the public office, it no longer remains independent, it gets influenced by these businessmen. So this is what the author is saying, that these business houses, they benefit from the expertise and connections of the senior bureaucrats. That means these senior bureaucrats who aspire to start a private sector career after retirement, they may not deal with private companies with a complete sense of independence when in office. So that is what I told you earlier, that their independence will be compromised. And the author also cites an example of this, that the last foreign secretary of India joined the Tata group immediately after retirement. So this is one example. So the author says that, see, we almost 30 years after liberalization, we know liberalization, private LPG reforms, they came in 1991, okay, new economic policy, we also call it NEP, 1991. So after almost 30 years after liberalization also, the process, that is crony capitalism, has opened a chapter that has not only impacted the economy. See, they are not only impacting the economy, they are not only getting the information about the policies of government, and they act accordingly. So they are not only impacting the economy, but also they are impacting the politics, okay, because they are entering the politics sphere and society as well. How society, just like we see many cases of tribals who oppose these projects in the areas where they live. So the author says that new forms of corruption have emerged due to this, because of the businessmen joining politics and affecting the economy as well as society as a whole. And a new political economy, it has been crystallized due to that. But the author says that one thing is common in all these types of corruption, that it undermines the state's independence. As I have told you that, the bureaucrats, the public office is compromised, and even the political parties, they will favor these businessmen because they are giving them the funds. So the state's independence is definitely compromised, no matter what type of corruption is it. Plus the promotion of public good, because now you will not see that what is good for the public, you will see what is good for the businessmen. So promotion of public good is also hampered, and private interest of these businessmen, that is served. So that is something common in all types of corruption, okay. And the author says that the new opaque electoral bonds, okay, if you know the exact procedure of the how the electoral bonds are issued and all, then you will come to know that it is even more opaque than the system that was existing before. So that makes this funding by the businessmen even more easier, because the electoral bonds are even more opaque, okay. And the author also says that it's not that only the businessmen, they are turning into politicians. There is a reverse trend as well. That means to earn the profits, even the MPs and MLAs, they are also becoming businessmen just to earn some profits. So what is the result of all that? The functioning of the state is affected. So it's obvious सी बात है ना, जो लोग हैं वो हमारी लोकसभा में बैठे हैं पॉलिसीज बनाने के लिए, ठीक है, उनका एक्सक्लूसिव काम होना चाहिए कि वो इंडिया के लिए गुड पॉलिसीज बनाएं, ठीक है। अब अगर वो बिजनेस में पड़ जाएंगे तो वो अपना ही प्रॉफिट सोचेंगे ना, तो वो लोगों का क्यों प्रॉफिट सोचेंगे, ठीक है। सो दैट इज हाउ द ऑथर कंक्लूड्स द लाइन बाय सेइंग दैट व्हाई शुड रूलर्स make hospitals, that is public hospitals, public schools and the police work if they have invested in the clinics, private schools and security firms, okay, they have invested in the private sector. The politicians, the MPs, the MLAs, they have invested in the private sector, in the clinics, in the private schools. Okay, why would they think about the public good? Why would they make hospitals and schools which are public, which are available to all at low cost? So this was the article regarding crony capitalism. Okay, let's move to the next article. The next article, it talks about the significant reforms which are happening in the banking sector. Basically, the author says that government has still not done anything substantial if we talk about the reforms in the state-owned or the public sector banks. And the author says that significant management reforms are needed in these state-owned banks. So let us see what has happened till date to solve the problems of the public sector banks. So first of all, author starts by saying that successive committees and India's banking regulator, that is RBI, they have for almost 2 decades highlighted the need for consolidation in the banking sector. And therefore, there was first the merger of subsidiaries of State Bank of India with the parent bank. So that was the first merger, and it was followed by the ill-advised decision. So the author thinks the second decision was not a good decision when Life Insurance Corporation, that is LIC Limited, acquired majority stake in the practically failed IDBI Bank. But the author says that the new proposal which has come for the amalgamation of Bank of Baroda, Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank, it will lead to the creation of India's third largest bank by deposits and advances, and this is a good step. So the author says that this is a good step because there is a merger of two small banks with a relatively bigger bank. So what are the two small banks? These are the Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank with a relatively bigger bank, that is the Bank of Baroda. So what will be the advantages of this amalgamation? So the author says the thing is that this Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank, they have reasonable presence in the southern and the western regions, okay? और वहाँ पे penetration अगर इसकी increase होती है, so that will ensure or complement more pan-India presence or more pan-India spread of the Bank of Baroda, because Vijay Bank and Dena Bank, they have reasonable presence in the southern and the western regions. And definitely the combined entity that will be able to leverage the branch network to effectively use the branch network, and thereby the problem of fragmentation will be addressed. And the author says that this move for consolidation, it should have come much earlier. बहुत पहले से आ जाना चाहिए था, along with the recapitalization of the banks plus the management structure. Okay, overhauling of the management structure of the public sector banks. So till date we are doing the consolidation of the banks. Okay, the government has given a recapitalization package, right? So the problems are addressed through consolidation and the recapitalization. Now the only thing is the management structure. Now the government needs to look at the management structure, and the author says that till date the government has not focused on the management. And the author also says that this proposed amalgamation, it will be a bit difficult, but of course the government has to do it very smoothly. It will have to convince the employees that this merger is in their interest and it will not lead to redundancies. And the author says that this can be done with enough attention and effort. But the larger question, it still remains that does this amalgamation, it fit with the future strategy for the public sector banks? So what will be our future strategy for the public sector banks, and will this amalgamation prove to be a boon for these public sector banks? Will the government allow them to run like competitive entities? Okay, that means will full autonomy be given to the management and their boards? And the author concludes by saying, see, boosting size through consolidation, it is not difficult. It is not difficult to merge some small banks in one big bank and do the consolidation. But what is difficult is that it should be accompanied by the governance reforms. It should be accompanied by the management reforms. So consolidation should not be done alone. It is not difficult at all. But what is difficult is that when you are doing the consolidation, you should also look at the governance and the management reforms, because only then we will have the efficient and competitive banks that will not burden the state, that will not burden the exchequer, and the banks that will support the industry when our economy is on the upswing. So this was the article regarding the recent amalgamation of the three banks. The next article, it talks about the public universities, and this is actually the debate on privatizing the higher education, privatizing the public institutions. So should it be done? Should the higher educational institutions be privatized? So author has this view that they are already privatized in some sense, that the vice chancellor, they have enormous powers in these institutions, and the author says that the main role of these universities is to develop a democratic and inclusive society, that is the public universities. And if we privatize these institutions, if we privatize the higher education, then this purpose may be hampered. So let's start the article. The author starts the article with these universities, the names of these universities: Motihar, JNU, Manipur University, Hyderabad University. So the author says we know they are very famous, and these campuses or these public universities or these higher educational institutions, they are famous because generally they are in news where anger is simmering or has flared up. Of course, they are famous for their good education, but they are also famous for the simmering discontent, for the simmering anger, which is making the students discontent here. And the author says some problems they are faced by these public universities. What are the problems? We have also discussed one article last month also regarding the higher education institutions, the problems faced by these higher education institutions, and some of them were that the positions of the professors, they are vacant because there are no qualified professors. Okay, so these positions are still vacant, and the professors who are actually working, they are being harassed by the management, and there is infrastructure problems. The students are also harassed. So these are some problem, these were some of the problems we talked about. Now the author has also given some other problems, like the hostile vice chancellors, who also tend to be underqualified. Now they are being appointed because of again favoritism, but they are underqualified, and these are hostile. That means management is hostile to the professors and the students, and there are narratives of sexism and sexual harassment, plus labeling of students from minority, that is another problem, and vulnerable sections as seditious, and there is violence against the dissenting students and teacher, plus subverting of statutory bodies and processes, victimizing teachers, bringing in expensive technocratic fixes for the non-existent problems. So these are all the problems which are faced by these higher educational institutions. And why these problems are arising? Because of the idea to reformulate education as a marketable service. That means you have to buy education. That idea gives rise to these problems. And there is an increasing tendency among the TV news channels also that this higher education are a drain on the public funds, that is the taxpayers' money. That means they are saying that higher education institutions are not doing much, and it's a drain on the public funds, but that is wrong. Okay, this criticism is wrong, and any dissent, okay, or any criticism of the government, they dub it as anti-national. But the author says that if someone is dissenting, that does not mean that that person is seditious. We should create an inclusive society, a democratic and an inclusive society. And of course, there has been some violent suppressions of dissent on various university campuses, and there has been a violent suppression of dissent on these university campuses, which is not at all warranted. We should create an inclusive society, a democratic society, and universities are the best place to do that. Universities are the best place to discuss the government policies, to criticize what is being done wrong, and to complement what is done right? But this is not happening. Any voices of dissent, they have been violently suppressed, and therefore now the stage is set to knock down two well established principles. So what are these two principles? First of all, that public funding of higher education, it is the only way to ensure that students from all kinds of socioeconomic background can access it. That means if the government is funding higher education, that is the only way that all kinds of people from SC, STs, OBCs, tribals, they are coming and getting access to this. And second is that the higher education, if we see it as a democratic inclusive society, then it must be governed through democratic decision making, that is with the inclusion of all the stakeholders in the universities. But what is happening is some people are getting power, like the vice chancellors in the central universities. So they are doing things according to what they feel right. There is no inclusion of the stakeholders in the universities. There is no democratic decision making in the universities. And recently, Ministry of HRD has given terms like, autonomy to the institutions and institutions of eminence. So the author says it's not needed because they are already autonomous, right? Why? Because each of these universities, they are formed through an act of parliament, so therefore they are meant to be an autonomous entity. So why we are labeling them as autonomous or institutions of eminence? And in actual, the power actually resides with the vice chancellors of the universities. So the author says that this move to grant autonomy, and recently also the Ministry of HRD granted grady have granted graded autonomy to universities across India. So the author says that this is a strange move and it must be scrutinized, that what this autonomy entails. So the author says is nothing called autonomous because the vice chancellors of universities, they are getting a free hand to run the universities. And if we will not give the public funding to these universities, if there will be a lack of public funding, then it will deal a death blow to the research, to the writing and publication by the faculty. That means R&D के लिए बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं होगा अगर हम पब्लिक फंडिंग जो है वो बंद कर देंगे। और आप बोल रहे हो कि हाँ जी, ये जो इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं उनको हम ऑटोनॉमी प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, ग्रेडेड ऑटोनॉमी प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, दे इंस्टीट्यूशंस ऑफ एमिनेंस, सो दे विल हैव मोर ऑटोनॉमी। तो आपका ऑटोनॉमी से मतलब क्या? अल्टीमेटली तो पावर जो है वो वाइस चांसलर के पास होती है, एंड दे हैव अ फ्री हैंड टू रन द यूनिवर्सिटीज। देयर इज नो इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑफ द stakeholders of the university. So how is this going to be inclusive? And if this public funding is stopped, then obviously what है जो students हैं from the marginalized sections, because we have just seen the two principles. Okay? If there is no public funding, then the students from the marginalized sections of society, they will not get access to the higher education, because then the higher education, it will be pursued only by those who will be rich. ठीक है, जो अमीर होंगे वही फिर एजुकेशन, हायर एजुकेशन ले पाएंगे, जो बाकी के जो कैटेगरीज हैं SC, ST, OBC, PhD, उनको नहीं मिलेगा, क्योंकि अगर आपके पास पैसा होगा तो फिर आप जाके एडमिशन ले पाओगे अगर हम पब्लिक फंडिंग नहीं देते, क्योंकि यूनिवर्सिटीज को कहीं से तो पैसा लाना पड़ेगा ना. सो दे विल गिव एडमिशन टू दोज हु आर गिविंग देम मनी, right? So that will be a wrong decision. Now the author also talks about the HEFA, that is the Higher Education Financing Agency. So it proposes to fund the civil and laboratory infrastructure projects in the universities through 10-year loans. But again, these universities will be turned into corporate entities, and they will be entangled in a web of real estate and the finance dealings. Apart from that, there was a Sam Pitroda-led Knowledge Commission, which has recommended that on the higher education, how much amount should be spent? It should be 1.5% of the GDP, and this should be exclusively for the higher education out of the 6% of GDP that the commission wanted to spend on education. So right now we know, I think it is approximately 1.5% for the whole of education, including primary, secondary. But this commission had proposed that 1.5 should be exclusively for the higher education, and there should be around 6% of spending, public spending on the education. And this commission also says that even 6% is not enough, and public funding should be further enhanced. So what is proposed by the Sam Pitroda-led Knowledge Commission is that you should increase the public spending. You should give around 1.5% of GDP exclusively for the higher education. But on the other hand, what our government is doing, for example, HEFA, they are giving this infrastructure. They're saying to the universities that you will get the infrastructure through 10-year loans. So basically they are becoming the corporate entities. They are not getting the public funds, okay, they are getting loans, so they will be involved in all these only. They will not get the time to give quality education, okay. So that is the problem. And as I told earlier, that higher education in India, it is already privatized to a great extent, because already number of private universities and colleges, they are growing, and these private universities and colleges, they are proposing some marketable courses. But again, these universities, these private universities, they are not creating any knowledge among the students, okay. They are just for profit. So there is already privatization. There are a few, very few public universities in India which are reputed institutions and which provide the quality education, and there are a number of private colleges and universities which are not providing the quality education. They're just for profits there. So why are we giving autonomy to the higher educational institutions, although the education that is already privatized, and it will only hamper. देखो अब इसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम है, अगर हम प्राइवेटाइज कर देंगे तो सबसे पहले तो इंक्लूजन की प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगी, ठीक है। जो मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शंस हैं सोसाइटी के, उनको एडमिशन नहीं मिलेगा, सिर्फ जो रिच होंगे, जो उनको पैसा देंगे यूनिवर्सिटीज को, उनको एडमिशन मिलेगा। एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, उनकी एजुकेशन जो है वो कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाएगी, क्वालिटी एजुकेशन नहीं रहेगी, क्योंकि जो यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं वो सिर्फ ये कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज की तरह ही काम करेंगी। वो सिर्फ अकाउंट्स में ही बिजी रह जाएंगी कि 10 ईयर का लोन लिया है, किसको वापस देना है, कब देना है, तो वो सब इन्हीं सब चीजों में जो है वो रह जाएंगे। तो एजुकेशन जो है वो भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाएगी, रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाएगी। अगर पब्लिक फंडिंग आप नहीं दे रहे हो, लोन्स दे रहे हो, तो R&D कहाँ से होगा, रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट कहाँ से होगा, उसके लिए भी फंड्स चाहिए। वो तो ऑलरेडी आपसे और फंड्स मांग रहे हैं, लेकिन आप जो हैं ऑलरेडी आप उनको भी कम कर रहे हो। So the author concludes by saying that we as students, teachers and parents, we must not fail to resist these sweeping changes, these changes of making the higher educational institutions as corporate entities, as privatized entities. So we must challenge that, we must speak up and tell that the spirit of academic excellence and diversity and social justice, it will be only upheld when public funding will be given to these universities, when they will not be privatized, because there is already a great extent of privatization in the country. So this was the article regarding the higher education. The last article, it is regarding the 2+2 India-US Dialogue. So first of all, what is COMCASA? So COMCASA, it stands for Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. So Communications Compatibility and Securities Agreement. So this is COMCASA, and it is one of the 4 fundamental agreements which the US signs with its allies and close partners. And why is this COMCASA signed? This is to facilitate the interoperability between the militaries plus the sale of high-end technology. That means to sell the technology and interoperability. This agreement has been signed, and it has been signed for a period of 10 years. And this COMCASA, it is a India-specific formulation, or we can say India-specific agreement of the CISMOA. CISMOA stands for the Communication and Information on Security Memorandum of Agreement. And what this COMCASA will do, it will help India or allow India to procure the specialized equipment, okay, military equipment. So this was regarding COMCASA. So what the author is saying, the author is saying that the people who are favoring this agreement COMCASA, they are saying that it could be a game changer for India. But the author says that this is not the case. Okay, we are not going to get the technology from US, because US will not give the technology so easily to anyone. Okay, so if you are saying that, okay, that will open the treasure to the US defense technology, then they are not going to give the technology. They will only sell their equipments. They will only sell their military equipments. So this is what the author is saying. And apart from that, the author says that the protagonist or those who are in favor, they are saying that India will have a new role that Washington is giving to India to contain China. But the author is saying, see, China is not a threat, that is a new discovery. Okay, everyone knew that China would be a threat. Okay, and many statements have been given regarding that earlier also, that China will be a threat, and India is seen to contain China. So this is not something new. This is not a new discovery that this agreement has done. So why the US is so keen to sign this agreement? So the main thing is that India has a very good market. India has a very good appetite for the imported defense equipment, and we have a very good market, and that is why US is so keen on selling their defense equipment to us. And if we see the data, India was the largest importer of the defense equipment with 12% of the world share in from 2013 to 17. That means India is the largest importer of defense equipment, and we have a great market for the US to sell their military equipment, and that is why US is so keen to sign the agreement. And another data is that India rose to the top, spending over $18 billion, which was more than 12% of that of the second largest importer, Saudi Arabia. So if someone asks who is the largest importer of the defense equipment, it is India, and the second largest importer is Saudi Arabia. Okay, so we have topped the list of importing the defense equipment, and this is not all. US is not only selling their defense equipment, they will also get another money from the life cycle cost. Okay, that means from the spare parts, from the upgradations of the equipment, and these seller nations, that is US, they would finally end up earning many times more than the original cost of the equipment that they are exporting. ठीक है, यानी कि सिर्फ आपने इक्विपमेंट बेची इंडिया को, सिर्फ वो पैसे नहीं जाएंगे यूएस के पास. यूएस के पास जो पूरा एक लाइफ साइकिल है उसका इक्विपमेंट का, उसमें जितना भी खर्चा आएगा वो यूएस के पास ही जाएगा. अगर कुछ स्पेयर पार्ट्स हमें चाहिए हुए, अगर अपग्रेडेशन करनी होगी टेक्नोलॉजी में, क्योंकि अगर हम ये सोच रहे हैं कि वो हमें टेक्नोलॉजी ही प्रोवाइड कर देंगे, then this is wrong. वो नहीं हमें प्रोवाइड करेंगे, ये हम गलत सोच के बैठे हैं. And US is just keen on signing this agreement क्योंकि उनको बहुत सारा प्रॉफिट होगा यहाँ से. And we already know that there is a trade surplus with US from the India side and trade deficit from the US side. So they want to cover this. Okay, they want to take advantage of the India's defense market, and they want to bridge this trade deficit which exists, okay, which is in favor of India, right? And the author says, see, interoperability, what we talked about, what will Comcasa do? It is only a byproduct of the mechanism to secure the US weapons. So obviously it will come only if we are securing the US weapons. Interoperability between the militaries, it will automatically come. Okay, it is a byproduct of that. The author also says that this agreement, it will not be a gateway to US technology either, because they are not going to give the technology so easily. So it's a wrong thing that we are expecting that. And it's not that Comcasa has no advantages. Obviously it has some advantages. It will facilitate the better sharing of intelligence among the militaries, and it will ensure more effective conduct of the war exercises. But this is not a reason enough for us to barter away our leverage from huge imports to obtain the defense technology. That means we should bargain on every deal which US is keen on doing. We should try and negotiate for the transfer of design and assistance. Okay, we should convince US to give us the technology, or we should convince them to help us in developing indigenous technology or the indigenous capability. तो या तो आप अपनी टेक्नोलॉजी जो है वो हमें ट्रांसफर कर दो. ठीक है, कैसे आप मिलिट्री इक्विपमेंट को डिजाइन करते हो उसका जो टेक्नोलॉजी का ट्रांसफर है वो कर दो, और अगर नहीं तो या फिर यूएस क्या कर सकता है, इट कैन हेल्प अस इन डेवलपिंग आवर इंडिजिनस कैपेबिलिटी टू डेवलप द मिलिट्री इक्विपमेंट्स. So this was the article regarding the US 2+2 dialogue. So this was it for today, guys. I hope you liked the lecture, and if you do, then please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.